I think social selling is the future. I don't believe cold calling and cold email are dead. I just think that a multi-channel approach is the way to do things. I mean, cold calling is great, but the whole purpose of social selling and email is to build familiarity.
This isn't your average revenue podcast. It's Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist, powered by Comsor. And it's your new work bestie. Through conversations with other women in the revenue space, Ashley and Katrina get candid about their unique experiences, help women tackle challenges in the workplace, and uncover ways to grow as revenue pros. Maybe you'll learn a little, cry a little, laugh a little, have an epiphany, or at the very least, get a killer playlist to listen to while you work. Being a woman in this industry is wild. Let's talk about it.
Hello, I'm Ashley.
And I'm Katrina.
Welcome to another episode of Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist. Today, our guest is Cynthia Handal. Cynthia is currently the head of global sales at Simera, a skill development and career platform. The mission is to become the bridge between top Latin American talent and US-based companies through remote work. Cynthia has worked in sales for over 17 years, has experience in multiple industries, most recently in tech, and has grown her Simera team from 3 to 32 reps. She's passionate about developing future sales leaders and has an empowerment-based approach to managing her team. She's recently helped launch the Simera Sales Academy, which offers free sales training to those based in Latin America. Today, Cynthia joins us to discuss coaching women in revenue, building a team, and all things BDR related, as well as teach us about what LATAM means.
Thanks for joining us, Cynthia.
Hi, guys. I'm really excited that I'm on today. It's so funny. When you guys asked me to define my walk-up song, I immediately thought of the song. And it's like You Can Do Magic by America. And it's funny because you know that there are certain periods of your life that some songs make sense to look like according to the situation or the circumstances or everything that's going on in the world. So I immediately thought of that song. I didn't even think about it. When you guys asked me that, I was just like, this is the song. I've been playing it over and over again.
Well, that's how you know that's the right walk-up song for you. And I think it's perfect for anyone in the revenue space because we can all do anything when we put our minds to it. Get a little bit of magic in the sales process, right?
I think a lot of us have kind of like a song that's on repeat in the background that we've kind of thought a little bit maybe relates to what we're doing every day. So I'm happy to hear that.
Same. Excited, as I said, to be here. And I hope that we're able to spread the word more about Latin America to American companies today.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about your current role and your company. Obviously, you're bridging the gap, as Ashley said, between Latin American talent and US-based companies. But what does that mean? What does that entail?
So what we do at I'm the head of global sales at Simera. I am actually based out of Latin America. I spend 50% of my time in Miami and 50% of my time in Honduras, born and raised in Honduras, Central America. But I'm moving full-time to Miami very soon. And when I started working for Simera, I had been working remotely for 2 years. And what really caught my attention about the company is that it's exactly what I represented, because I think that when you sell a product, you really have to believe in what you're selling. I mean, that's a huge value prop if the salesperson actually believes in the product or service that you're selling. So what better example? When I talk to people and I tell them that I'm based out of Latin America, they go silent, because when you think about Latin America, the Philippines and India, the first thing that you think is cheap staff, or you go back to that old biased, like cliche thought that you think that there's going to be a huge accent problem, that they're not going to be qualified, because that's what we've seen in the movies. Like Latin Americans mostly are people that emigrated to the US and that they have a huge accent, that they're overworked, and that's the image that everybody has. So people are really surprised to find that there's a huge untapped talent pool down here. And that's what we're trying to show American companies through Simera. You would be surprised at the resumes that we find, people that actually went to SCAD, Harvard, Stanford, all types of expensive colleges in Boston, Florida. fully bilingual, native. You wouldn't even think that they're Latin America. Extremely creative. They add diversity to your company. It's a whole different culture, but very similar to the American culture. So we're trying to show companies, which I think is the biggest bias, that Latin America is not what you think. That whenever we talk about the wages being lower, it's not that you're going to get lower quality of the candidates. It's actually you're getting a diverse talent pool. You're getting access to a lot of people that you didn't have before. And with so many things going on in the US, a recession looming on top of us, the great resignation, then people layoffs, and layoffs continue to go. A lot of companies pivoting in different directions. I think diversity is actually one of the best ways to scale your company, because having people with diverse backgrounds just adds culture, and it adds something like that extra spice that your company doesn't have. All of my team, all of my BDRs are based out of Latin America. They're spread out from Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Panama, and Costa Rica. You would be amazed at the quality of talent we have. Yeah.
That's so cool. And I actually think it's really interesting that you're bringing up this bias, because we both have had some conversations about that. Obviously, we're both women, and our kind of driving purpose of our podcast is to talk about women in sales. And it's not just people who are exactly like us, but it's also people from other underrepresented groups. So I'm really excited to have you on to talk about this. This is actually really, really cool.
Thank you. Yeah. And what we're trying to do is we are also involved in a lot of communities. We recently got involved with Rev Genius. We're going to have a couple of webinars coming very soon with Rev Genius, because we want to spread the word as much as we can. We want to grow in communities, and we want to make this a huge space for Latin American talent to find opportunities, especially in countries where local opportunities are so scarce and difficult to find. It's extremely difficult.
One of the things that is this is off topic a little bit for what we've got on our prompts, but I was hoping that you could expand on, I have some friends that are actually BDRs in Latin America myself. And actually, most of them coincidentally are also women. There's a little bit of an extra bias, I think, that comes with being a woman in that culture. Is that something you're comfortable talking about here today?
100%. I think it really depends on the industry, and you would be surprised, but a lot of the companies, they see the personalities of a lot of the BDRs. It's funny because all of my BDRs never had previous sales experience. Some of them sort of had some sales experience. I have a mixed team. I'm 50% women and 50% male, and I have a mix of everything because I think it's good to have diversity. But a lot of companies actually love to have women on their teams because they're so creative. And I'm not saying guys are not, because guys are extremely creative too, but a lot of the girls that I have are graphic designers too. So they have that natural creative side in there. And they never thought that they would be good at being in sales. All they knew was graphic design. And when I had interviews with them, their personalities were bubbly, they were fun. And I told them, you can use your graphic design skills to sell, because that's actually an amazing skill that you have versus other BDR candidates that don't have, which means that you're going to be good at personalized emails. You're going to be good at creating and crafting your own LinkedIn post. And one of them actually booked 22 meetings last month. It was huge. I know.
Wow.
In 1 month?
In 1
Congrats
month.
to her.
Exactly. She's right now, she's the top performer of the team. Celeste, if you're hearing this, you're awesome. And another one of the...
Shout out.
Yeah. Another one's a UX designer, and she booked 15 meetings. It's amazing. That's why I love diversity so much. I tend to hire BDRs more on potential, and I love hiring people that have non-traditional sales backgrounds, because I actually think they make the best salespeople. That's my experience and what I've seen.
I agree, and I will argue that until the end of time.
Same.
And one of our best performing reps currently was a Marine and then a Starbucks store manager, and now he's a BDR, and he's absolutely crushing it because he came in with no biases, right, from former tech sales companies or whatever it might be. And he's so creative. And I think he applies all of the different things he learned both from being in the Marines as well as being a Starbucks store manager to sales. And he'll have all these creative ideas that come out of left field that you're like, where did that come from? How did you think of that? And I truly think it's the diverse background that allows people to become better salespeople and outperform others by bringing that creativity to the table.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. Because they've never worked in sales before, they see this as an opportunity to maybe quick start another career. And what I tell my team is I really don't care if you have side hustles. I'm all for side hustles as long as it's not in company time. I don't have a problem if they're building their own personal brand. I don't have a problem if they're TikTokers. Actually have a lot better TikTokers and like TikTok celebrities, Instagram celebrities. I'm happy for them. As long as it's not in Simera time, you can do whatever you want with your free time. And I think that's actually great because people who tend to be more creative on their personal lives like to control the conversation. And that's actually a great trait when you're a BDR, which helps you sell more.
And that goes hand in hand with social selling, right?
Exactly.
When you build your own personal brand, it actually helps you as a salesperson.
100%. Yes.
So do you encourage your reps to participate in social selling and be super active on LinkedIn?
Yeah, as a company requirement, we do a multi-channel approach and it has worked really well for us. My reps not only book through cold call and cold email, a lot is booked through forums and LinkedIn. At the beginning, it was really hard to get them on LinkedIn because a lot of them weren't even active on LinkedIn. They only had like 7 followers or something like that. So it took us like 6 months to get them where they're at. One of them actually is reaching 7,000 followers. Another one has like 3,004. What we do is that since social selling is a part of their responsibilities, they're required to post 3 times a week. Anything sales related, not specifically Simera related, because I've taught them that just posting about what Simera does is it's social selling. It's not going to help with your audience. You have to build an audience. But as a require, those that are more active tend to post 5 times a week. And we push them to like follow top voices on LinkedIn. We even have a list that's like 10,000 LinkedIn voices you should follow just so that they engage with them, start building their community. And I have a couple of reps that are doing really good on LinkedIn. Some of them book around 5 to 10 meetings via LinkedIn a month, and it's purely on social selling. So yes, we encourage them, but there is a training and coaching side that goes hand by hand. Because especially when you do social selling, like for example, something that I am just emphasizing today again with them is using videos for video prospecting in a world where you're swamped as a head of sales or as a VP or as a CEO or something. Like I get more than 50 emails a day and I don't respond to them because they're all purely pitch slaps. Like we call them, they're like, hey, Cynthia, and they're all like the same message. Oh, your career is impressive. Sana, you got a stellar review from so and so. You know that these are even automated messages. But I actually answer those messages when somebody actually does a personalized video like, hey, Cynthia, it shows that they actually took some time, or somebody actually sends me a gift, something that makes them stand out. So I try to push them to go more into the creative side than just what everybody else is doing, like connecting. How are you? I want to sell you something. Like that's the old approach on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We have a rep at Comsor who will make personalized Loom videos instead of comments to respond to people's LinkedIn posts. He is yet to have a single video that has not been responded to in a positive way. Every single video gets a response from the person that he's posting it for. So videos work, especially when they're very hyper-personalized.
Exactly.
You're definitely in good company here. We like social selling for sure.
Sure do.
I think social selling's the future. I don't believe cold calling and cold email are dead. I just think that a multi-channel approach is the way to do things because I've seen that a lot of companies also do like a boiler room, only cold calling approach. And if you only do cold calls to book your meetings, I mean, cold calling is great, but the whole purpose of social selling and email is to build familiarity. So whenever you're not booking through cold calling, you have your extra sources, which are LinkedIn and email, to actually book more meetings. So that's what I think about how the approach should be.
Yeah, and the cool thing about social selling is that it makes all of your other channels warmer, right? Because if someone's familiar with you from LinkedIn, from your posts or how you commented meaningfully and thoughtfully in response to whatever they sent, when you pick up the phone and call them, or when you send them an email, like, oh, I know Ashley, I know Cynthia, of course I'm going to hear her out, whatever she has to say, right? You've already bridged that gap and that broken that ice. And so it's become a little bit of a warmer lead.
And it's not
Exactly.
just that, as someone who's in a closing role, it also helps you throughout the whole deal cycle. And I think that those opportunities are a lot more real, and it's a lot easier to be really transparent with your buyer and them to be transparent with you because they feel a little bit more like they know you and trust you. And I think that that's just really great all around.
Yeah, and probably one of the biggest positions that we sell for and that were most popular in Simera is for BDR and SDR positions. So like I told you, selling a product I believe in, because whenever I go into meetings, what I talk about is what I've been successful, how I have been able to build my team, what has worked with my team and what hasn't worked with my team. So that also gives me a lot more credibility whenever we're pitching to customers, because I tell them I tried this and I wasn't successful, but I did this, this, and this, and it's successful. And sometimes it might work. It really depends on the industry or not. But that's how we have prevented a lot of churn with BDR roles, because something that I see every single day is that I see a lot of extremely qualified candidates that or BDRs. They're extremely talented, but they don't have any coaching from their managers or any coaching from the companies they work for. And on day one, they're just expected to book meetings. And I start getting emails from their managers like, so and so has been 2 months with the company and only booked 2 meetings for the company. So I have a conversation with that BDR and he's like, yeah, Cynthia, but they're actually making me call this specific list and this is the only list I can call. And I'm like, why aren't you prospecting on your own? Why aren't you looking for leads? Because I'm not allowed to. So I had to have a huge conversation with the manager about that. Like, you actually need to let them prospect. Another company didn't even have a polo or zoom in. So people were only calling company headquarters. And I was like, how are you even supposed to, your reps to get connect rates if you're not giving them the correct tools to actually prospect? It's things I see every day. Or another company was only having their reps reach out via LinkedIn because they didn't think they were ready for emailing and cold calling. And I told them, do you know how much time it actually takes for somebody to be successful in LinkedIn? It's a long win. And the whole purpose of social selling is familiarity. It has to go accompanied with a cold call, with an email. And like, it's a whole conversation I had to have with the CRO from a company to actually get him to allow his reps to make calls and emails. So coaching is a huge part on why some people are more successful. And sometimes I see extremely talented people that fail in companies because of that. It's like they aren't provided any tools. And even if you're like a survivor and you're that person that always is like going the extra mile, sometimes you need those tools. Like sending out 100 manual emails a day versus having like actually a campaign tool is going to make your life easier, or doing 300 manual calls a day versus having a power dialer or having an actual CRM. I've seen everything. You would be surprised at the horror stories I listened to. It's horrible out there.
Well, I think teams, right, are sometimes only as good as their leaders. And if they lack management and leadership and coaching, it's hard for them to succeed, right? Of course, there's always exceptions. There's always someone that's fine on their own and can coach themselves. But for the majority, they really do need a mentor of some sort and help put some boundaries around what they're doing and coach what they're doing in their BDR role. You know, what suggestions do you have to those managers so that they too can become better coaches, better mentors to their teams?
I think the number one question I ask is, what are your metrics and expectations, and what does success look like to you, like 1 month from now, 2 months from now, and 3 months from now? Because I think that everybody that starts in every sales role, you need to have clear expectations. That's also one of the horror stories. Like, I talk to BDRs and I'm like, okay, so I just got an email from your manager that he says you haven't been doing any calls and emails. And he's like, oh, well, they still have me in training. And I'm like, okay, have they talked about metrics? No. Have they talked about expectations? No. So I think as a sales manager, it's important to set very clear metrics and expectations from what you expect your team to have. And I think it's important to work with SMART goals as well, because there is a ramp up time with BDRs, especially with like the new BDRs or people that have potential, but they need more coaching on. So it's like, you have to be realistic with the goals. Like, I had a conversation with one BDR that he was asked to provide 15 meetings a month. I remember it was the beginning of Q1 of this year. Q1 was horrible. Like, things only started picking up for us in March. January and February was rough sledding all of the way. So if my team was barely doing 10 meetings per rep in January and February, doing 15 or 20 for a niche industry probably wasn't going to cut it out. So I think clear expectations and metrics are one of the most important things. 2, an action plan. Like, where do you see this BDR 1 month from now? What does success look like to you? And what have other reps in your company that are successful? What have they done to be successful? Because one of the things that we teach at the Sales Academy is I never try to change what they're currently doing in the company, because I tell them these are only better practices. If your company has a specific way of doing things that's already working for them, stick to that. These are only better practices for things that you can better what you have, or change it if your manager thinks it needs changing. But if your manager has a specific way of doing things, you should stick to that and not try to change it to what I'm teaching. So that, and also, just so that you know, I hate scripts and cold calling. And I tell managers that people who sound scripted are most likely never to get meetings, because people know when somebody...
Yeah, they sound like a robot.
Exactly. But for those types of reps that are very new at cold calling, I think at least the conversation flow is important, and they should stick to that conversation flow until they feel comfortable not using the conversation flow, especially when objections and rebuttals come up and they're not very familiar with the product. So like I told you, it's the past year in Simera, it's been a test and trial, crash and burn with the BDRs. We've tried out so many different things. And continuous coaching is part of our every day, doing those role play sessions, mock calls every single week, because reps need training. And there is, even the most talented reps that work on their own, they need motivation and just some sort of training, or just bringing a mentor on to have a conversation with them, a BDR who's successful from another company, and have them do a QA with them. Something. Motivation is always important, and continuous learning is part of the BDR journey, because in an ever-changing world, you know that the whole conversation about dark social 3 months ago, now the conversation is AI, like my LinkedIn is locked with ChatGPT and how AI is going to replace BDRs and SDRs, blah, 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 blah. So I think that continuous coaching, training, and learning is a huge part of having your BDRs be successful.
You're speaking
my
language.
I saw an interesting stat the other day from the community called Pavilion, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with.
I am.
But they released a report from 2022 that said 73% of BDRs did not hit quota. Do you think that's specifically related to those unrealistic metrics you were talking about? And
100%.
Or is it a whole bunch of factors?
I think that it's all related to coaching and training, because I'm not saying that every coach can be trained, because you do have to have that personality where you're able to accept feedback in a humble way, and be able to quickly change things to receive that feedback. So that's also a part of it. But I think that your metrics have to be real according to market trends, according to worldwide situations. Like, you saw how like February and January were horrible. Like, every single day, my LinkedIn was layoffs. Like, my reps, let's say 50% of the calls they were doing were, let's say that they called C-suite and they were like, hi, whatever. And they're like, no, I no longer work for that company. It was like horrible. So I had to adjust the metrics and lower them, not the metrics, the goals, to lower them to the situation that was going on. In March, things picked up and we were able to put higher goals again. And April has been going well so far. So I think that it's about being realistic as well. And if your reps aren't reaching your goals, you seriously have to do a deep dive into your company. And it's like, is your talent the right talent? Because sometimes you can actually really like a person, but they might not be cut out for sales. And that's probably, if a BDR has been in your company for 3 to 4 months and never reached quota, there's probably a reason for that. 2, what are the tools that you're providing? 3, how are they prospecting? That's one of the biggest things. Like, you get reps that book meetings sometimes that are extremely unqualified. So how fine-tuned is your ICP? Who are the decision makers that you're using? If they're doing emails, what tools are they using for emails? How are they crafting their emails? I mean, it's a lot of back-end work that people who hire BDRs sometimes don't think about, that they have to think about if they want their BDRs to be successful. That's mainly what I would.
So I want to go back to something you said in the beginning. You said that right now your BDR team is 50% women and 50% men. As a woman sales leader, how do you specifically work to hire and promote women BDRs specifically?
So you're not going to believe this, but all of my sales development managers are women. I have 4 managers girl power. And it just happened. I wasn't looking for it. When I started with the team, I only had males. I have on my team, it's like 17 girls in total and like 16 guys right now, or 15 girls, something like, it's 50 and 50, I'm pretty sure. So it just happened. Like, 2 of my top performers who had awesome personalities, one's based out of Costa Rica, the other one's based out of El Salvador. They were leaders since the very beginning. So when the time came to actually find business development managers, I knew who it was. It was them. And each one of them now has 8 BDRs under them, and they're doing extremely well. Like, last month, one of the teams booked 70 meetings. The other one booked like 65, something like that. Then my RevOps manager is also a woman, and it just happened. She was also a BDR. And we built her up because she has a finance background and she's purely supply chain and ops. And she's really good at finding bottlenecks. So she's actually in charge of all of the QA, all of the revenue operations from the team. And she is my retention manager as well. So she's extremely dedicated and she's thriving in that position. I have 2 males that are managers too. One's actually the sales training manager. The other one's the sales talent manager. And it just happens. You see potential in some people that since the very beginning show more leadership skills than others. They give that extra mile. They're always giving you extra input. They're always coming up with ideas, initiatives that you probably wouldn't think about. And I love that because I think that having success as a team is working together. That's what I tell them. Like, I don't want to be the superstar. Like, I had a whole conversation with my managers yesterday with my 2 team leads, the ones that manage the BDRs. And I told them, like, you guys need to understand that you need to work harder on LinkedIn because I don't want to become like known as the only person in Simera that's famous out there. Like, I want you two to be famous, to be people that BDRs admire, that they want to like. Well, one's 26 years old, the other one's 25. You wouldn't believe it. And they're already managers. They're so talented. I told them, I want the world to get to know you. You need to put yourself out there. I'm extremely proud of you guys. So I think it's more of a personality trait, and it has nothing to do that being specifically women. I chose them. It just happened to happen, and that they were there at the right time, the right moment. But I do believe in empowering women, and I do believe in empowering Latin American talent as well. We're a very overlooked community. And like I told you at the beginning of the interview, the world is very biased when it thinks about staffing talent from Latin America. People sometimes think that because of the time zone difference, which is either 1 hour, just so that you know, ahead, or 1 hour behind, or sometimes some countries are at the exact time zone as the States. Some people think it's not going to work out, and we're just trying to spread the word more and more about Latin America.
So you just talked a lot about like why those specific BDRs were promoted regardless of being a woman, a man. What can BDRs that are potentially listening to this episode do to set themselves apart from their fellow peers and work towards a promotion, whether it is for a manager position or to AE, for example?
And that's a good question because number one, not every BDR wants to be an AE, but some BDRs do want to be AEs. I think that the most important thing, because I was a BDR once, I don't know if you guys know that about me. I had never worked remotely before the pandemic and I lost my job. During the pandemic, I was a VP of sales for a huge global real estate company. And I found myself without a job July 2020. And I wanted so desperately to get into tech and work remotely that I started applying to jobs, any job that was remotely in Honduras. And I got a call from a company in Boston. You're not going to believe it. I didn't even know what a sales development rep was. I had no idea what the role was. I didn't even know what it was. I had never heard about it. And they gave me the job purely based on my potential in English. And I was freaking out the first day on my job because there's all these tools like I had never used before. And I'm like dying right there and then. And I remember that I just want to move on in life. Like I would take all of these courses on HubSpot Academy, Udemy, whatever I could find for free on the internet. And I would read up on how many days does it actually take to reach quota as a BDR. And I remember reading it takes 99 days. And I said I'm going to do it in 30. My manager told us you have to do 40 calls. And I started thinking, if I do 40 calls and I get X connects, what happens if I do 60? Then what happens if I do 75? What happens if I do 100? So I think that as a BDR, you have to do more than the bare minimum. And that's something that helped me out. And I remember I had this coworker who was also a BDR. I booked a meeting on my very first week as a BDR. It took her 3 months to book her first meeting and she was never successful. And it was because I kept doing more than the bare minimum. I remember them telling us that there were forums where, fun fact, it was a car wash industry. We sold car wash point of sale systems to express car washes. So imagine that, calling car washes and speaking to owners. So I remember that somebody said that there was this huge forum online where they would go into Facebook groups. I was in every single forum and I booked meetings via forums. I booked meetings via email. I had no idea how to write cold emails. I would do like these 10 paragraphs emails. They would ask me how I would get replies. It was crazy. And I think it's going that extra mile. I was just taught the foundations, but I was never really taught how to write a good warm email or like, I knew how to cold call from my previous job, but selling to a U.S. industry is completely different from selling in Latin America. So I think that if you want to be successful as a BDR, if you want to be successful and grow fast, you have to do more than the extra mile. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, grind until they see your potential. I was promoted to an AE 6 months later, which I hated. Just so that you guys know, it's not that I hate being an AE, but specifically in that industry, the sales cycle is like 3 to 4 months because these aren't like $1,000 sales. These are multi-million-dollar sales, like car wash equipment for POSs and pay stations are pretty expensive. So yeah, when you close the deal, the commission was pretty good, but it's also a huge nurturing and waiting time. So it killed me because I'm all about that energy action. I've always that's why I love BDRs because there's that energy and that action and the feeling when you get a meeting. And I was about to quit. I started looking for other jobs. I hated it as an AE. And when they heard I was quitting, they actually gave me a job as an SDR manager for that same company. And I loved it. I was back to doing what I loved. And my team grew very successful. And I actually left that company to come over to Simera. So I think it's actually having that will to learn and having that will to move forward in life and having that will to be able to do more than you're asked for. That's what separates the rock stars and people who grow very quickly than people who don't grow in companies. It's not just about personality. It's about doing the work that nobody else is doing.
Yeah, I think the fastest way to stand out, regardless if you're a BDR or an AE, is to go above and beyond of what's expected of you.
Exactly.
But also, I think having natural curiosity is super important too if you want to progress to the next step, whatever that looks like for you.
It sounds to me like you had a lot of inner motivation to be successful and you got very creative. That forum story especially it sounds like nobody else was doing that. So I think
nobody else
hit on a lot of really important points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I remember reading online about doing a multi-channel approach. And just so that you know, car wash owners are never on LinkedIn. It's not good for social selling, but forums were awesome. And I would actually book 6 meetings a month through forums exclusively and through Facebook. There were like these specific Facebook groups, like where car wash owners would live in. And there were like 17,000 members in one of them. So you would actually see somebody say like, hey, I am looking for a car wash point of sale system. What do you think about this company? That's a hot lead. So I would live on those forums. I remember I was actually called out once because funny things happen in those forums. Like somebody thought I wasn't real, like, and they put my picture up and they said like, why are we having, I know this is sexist, what I'm going to say. Why are we having attractive Latin American women send me messages?
Oh, no.
Is this real? I mean, I remember my manager saying, Cynthia, never wrestle with a pig. They like it and you both get dirty. It was horrible. Like somebody put my picture up. I remember the forum. And I had all sorts of messages like, wow, is she single? Wow, give me her number. Just because this specific person didn't like me sending out like a Facebook connection request. And he was actively posting messages like, I'm interested in a POS. And I told him, I work for X and X company and we're willing. And he's like, attractive Latin American woman. It was horrible. But it actually.
I think the sad part is, oh, go ahead.
No, my manager was actually happy it happened because he showed it to the team like somebody that's going above and beyond, which actually proves she's doing her job. But it was sad to like have somebody being so sexist like that. Like it was horrible.
Yeah.
And I'll say, I think the sad part is for all women in revenue is that would never have happened if it was a man. He probably wouldn't have put a man on blast and be like, oh, this attractive man is reaching out to me. This is where he works. Is he real? Right? Like I guarantee a man has never experienced.
And you know what's
like
the worst part? That he said that was her company's strategy to get their attention, to have attractive females from Latin America reach out to single car wash owners. Like, dude, like.
How would you have even known he was single?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, he's thinking too much, too highly of himself.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
That's a wild story.
That's a wild story, but I think we all have a story like that where our looks or the fact that we were a woman influenced the way someone responded to us. And I know I have a handful myself.
Completely true.
Oh, yeah. That's the sad reality of being a woman in revenue. Mm-hmm. Kind of to wrap up the conversation about, BDRs and what to do to be a successful BDR. I'm curious if you are seeing any specific trends in the BDR space for 2023 that you're willing to share with us.
So I think that, and we could go on about this for hours, I see so much about ChatGPT and AI. If you ask me, my personal opinion, what I think about this is no, it won't replace salespeople. Why? Because I think that in sales, you need to build relationships and the human touch cannot be replicated. Like it's actually good for crafting emails, for follow-up emails, but there is a whole human side that machines will never be able to replicate, even if you teach them. Like when you look at somebody's face and the expression they make, you're witty and you think of something immediately when you're having a Google Zoom, that sort of thing. I think AI is here to help us automate our jobs, which is a lot easier for sending emails. Instead of spending an hour doing a personalized email, you're going to spend a minute doing one, which is going to make your life helpful. It's going to be able to personalize tasks, like when people need a virtual assistant and maybe they just need lists, that sort of thing. But it will never replace salespeople because there is a quality that salespeople have that machines don't have. So I see a lot of trends going on with artificial intelligence, and I'm all for it as long as it's used in a helpful way. I don't think it's going to replace salespeople. Another huge one that I keep seeing is dark social. People going on Discord, people are going on TikTok. Personally, we tried going on Discord and going on TikTok. I mean, that's good for your personal brand to build your community, but I don't think you're going to find leads out of TikTok, especially for B2B companies. That's mostly like for B2C companies, right, where you're trying to sell a physical good, and like for like your personal brand. I think that's good. Or maybe creating content on TikTok to repost on LinkedIn, that. But like I said, forums for me, when I was an SDR, were a huge source. So it really depends on the industry and it depends on the product you sell. So I would say that, yeah, dark social, depending on the industry, is good. A lot of these email tools like Lavender, Mailshake, Reply.io, all of them are really hot and trending right now. And people are no longer using their CRMs to send sequences. They're using all of these tools, which are extremely successful. And a lot of these companies out there like Apollo, ZoomInfo, they're actually gathering a lot of intent data that's going to help us personalize more our outreach to customers. So those are some of the trends I'm seeing right now.
All right, Cynthia, would you rather manage a team of 100 SDRs or a team of 3 SDRs?
Probably a team of 3 SDRs.
Okay. Would you rather have your team have to give up LinkedIn/LinkedIn Sales Nav, or would you rather give up Outreach/SalesLoft or one of those automation tools?
I would rather give out SalesLoft and Outreach. Yes.
Okay. Would you rather be on a small, scrappy sales team with more ownership or part of a larger, more structured/well-equipped team, but with less ownership?
Probably a scrappier, smaller one with a lot more ownership.
Good choice. Would you rather do a whole day of cold calling or a whole day of just putting information into like Salesforce?
I would probably do number 1.
Okay. I thought you might say that. All right. Last one. Would you rather have to do 50 jumping jacks every time one of your BDRs receives a rejection from a prospect? Or would you rather sing the entire We Are the Champions by Queen song every time one of your BDRs books an opportunity?
50 jumping jacks. That's
so 50 jumping jacks.
Get me into Shake Fast.
Okay.
I need that.
double whammy. Awesome. Thank you. That's perfect. Thanks, Cynthia. We really appreciated having you on. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you guys for having me. Have an awesome day. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist. This show is powered by Comsor, the go-to-network company. Comsor is the complete suite of tools for teams looking to grow, activate, and engage their networks. If you enjoyed the learnings and banter in this episode, there's more where this came from. Follow Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. See you next time.